Yeah, yeah.
We are the epitome of Black female love.
It's
Yeah.
easy for us as Black women to hold up the banner and the calls for everyone else. But again, who holds up the banner and the calls for us? What role does the church play in all of this stuff?
Is that we as a Black church are perpetuating the same behavior as a patriarchal evangelicals have been
That's
doing.
right. And guess
Church, but it's the sisters in the congregation.
But it's a lot of times it is the Black women who bring us down more, or push or try to silence our voices more in the Black church.
Hold on.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Timely Wisdom broadcast. I am your host, one of the hosts for today, Dr. Sarita Wright out of Kansas City, Missouri. And we have the gorgeous, my sister, my friend, Dr. Brenda Perry Wallace out of Hotlanta, Georgia. And we're not lopsided, but you know, when you're missing a piece, you get a little uncomfortable. And so our founder and our director, Dr. Burns, is traveling. Dr. Bradford, we believe, will be coming on a little later. She had some scheduling issues, and so we believe she'll be coming on a little later. But hit the chat, let us know that you're here. We are excited and happy to see each and every one of you. And I just want to take this opportunity to say I am so thoroughly blessed because I get to co-host with some of the baddest sisters in the country. And we don't just cover one part of the country, we cover many parts of the country. So we welcome you today to Timely Wisdom. And I just, I'm going to pass it over to my Dr. Wallace and let her give a shout out to you too.
Hello, hello, hello. I am grateful and thankful to be here and to be alive. It is a great time, unfortunately, or fortunately, I might say, that it is the Dr. Wright and Dr. Wallace show today. We are missing two of our co-hosts, but we will have them back with us shortly. And I am so grateful to be a part and to be a friend of one of our guests today.
Amen. Amen. We are so excited. Dr. Wallace, what's going on down there in Hotlanta? I know. Now, wait a minute. Now, help me if I'm wrong, because I know that there is Ian is making its way to Florida. And usually when they, those hurricanes do that, they usually come down the coastline.
Right.
So will you guys be impacted by that at all?
We may be, hurricanes have a mind of their own. And sometimes it will turn and come through Atlanta. We'll get the storms afterwards. Sometimes she'll go over to the East Coast. She's coming in off the West Coast, may cross Florida and come back to the East Coast. We have no idea, but we are preparing and making sure that we have what we need in stock, water and everything else. What we normally don't get the heaviest of the brunt. Normally that's on the coastal areas. It would be Savannah or South Carolina or maybe Pensacola on that West Coast or Mobile. We may not get a whole lot of it. We'll get the remnants of it when it's almost died out.
Okay. Well, I know from what I've seen on CNN, the people are doing that mad dash to Lowe's. They've cleaned out the Home Depot in
everywhere.
That area.
When you talking about a Category 3, 4 hurricane, it's time to leave and board up the house and go inland to a shelter. Do not stay at home. In the Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area, it's a low-lying area. It is below sea level, so it's no telling how much water will get cover those places. So it's best to leave and be safe.
Well, just a shout out to our Florida families. We will definitely be keeping you lifted up in prayer,
Absolutely.
knowing that he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers or sleep, knowing that God will cover you and keep you and protect you during this time. And I tell you, there's just so much going on around the country. And I had the opportunity to be in Dallas the other day visiting friends. It was 100. Please tell me why somebody needs to have 106-degree weather.
Climate change.
I'm absolutely
the deniers. It's climate change. What are you talking about? That's why we got this horrible storm and the heat.
Well, that 106 was just it was like I think it brought new meaning for me to a crispy critter, because had I stood out there, I'd have been a crispy critter.
Yes, 106 is a bit hot, a bit warm. But they tell me hell is hotter than that. So
hey, I'm not gonna do a comparison. I'm not. Well, listen. Again, we're going to be praying for our families down there in the Florida area. God has blessed us and allowed us to have many viewers from Florida. Mm-hmm. And you know, we love our viewers. We love our viewers. We love our viewing family. And I just want to take the opportunity to say how much we appreciate you guys for just tuning in and checking on us and saying hey and letting us know that you're there. And it's just a blessing. I said, all right, Renee Thompson, I see you unto him who is able. Go ahead, girl. That'll preach all by itself.
Yes.
Under Casey, I see you. She said, we better believe in climate change. It is real. Hello.
It is real. It is.
Wait. Dr. Burns sent this message in to get off Texas. You know, when things are evident, it just is what it is. It's evident. Texas, they say everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah. And it's hotter too. It's hotter too. How about that? It's hotter too. Yes. I hear those. I think I heard that the Saints won on Sunday. Is that right, Dr. Sarita?
Think so. Yes, I think so. Yeah, them Chiefs.
Well, I hate to even think about what happened to the Falcons, so I'm not going to go there at all. No. And Dr. Burns is not here to talk about Dallas, so we'll skip over that.
She said get off Dallas, so we're going to work with that for a minute. We'll deal with her privately. Yes. Hello, Dr. Valerie Bell. God bless you. Good to see you. Minister Valerie Bell, good to see you. Absolutely. Marjorie Hamilton Scott, greetings. It's a blessing to see all of you. I got Natalie Davis. Hey, Nat. It's all right. Appreciate you all tuning in and praying for us. Please, and we are praying for you as well.
Amen.
Dr. Burns sent this in capital letters and an exclamation mark. What? She got 3 exclamation marks. Cowboys. Are there Cowboys out there where you are?
I said we were not going to talk about them since she was not here.
Oh, okay. But she's
trying to make sure that other folks. I hope she's not driving and texting.
Oh, safe driving, Dr. Burns.
Please. We want to see you, especially next week. How about that?
Well, Renee Thompson Jones said, "Oh, but the Cowboy representatives are present." With these footballs and blue hearts.
Yeah, y'all can have it. I'm a scholar and I'm not a jock, so y'all can have it.
Renee Thompson said, Dr. Wallace, don't do my pastor. Are you scared?
I will deal with you later, Reverend Renee. We'll talk offline. How about that?
Amen. Well, listen, we are going to go ahead and get started. We have As always, I don't even know why we have to get in the introduction and say we have an amazing, we have a phenomenal, we have a spectacular, we have a great guest, because we have had some of the most phenomenal people. And I say people because we have men and women, but we have had some of the most phenomenal people in the country on our broadcast.
Amen.
And I mean, they can talk to you from any level, and they can talk to you about anything. And so we're excited today. I'm going to surrender my stand and let Dr. Wallace go ahead and introduce our guest today so that she can come on and we can keep it moving.
I met this young lady when I was assistant pastor at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, Dr. Fleta Mask Jackson. She's a scholar, an educator, an activist, president of Corporation LLC, a national research firm and think tank. How about that? And where she is the leader of Save 100 Babies. Dr. Jackson led groundbreaking research on stress and resilience, and she is the author of numerous, too many to name, peer-reviewed scientific articles and book chapters. Her work is cited in major newspapers, magazines, media outlets, which include Vox, Ebony, Essence, CNN, NPR, and ProPublica. Her work has been featured in documentaries. Get ready. When the Bow Breaks, an episode of an award-winning PBS series. Unnatural Causes is inequality making us sick? Yes, I'll answer that. And in the film Crisis in the Crib. She also appeared in Lightbox Productions' Death by Delivery, a documentary by Black maternal mortality in Georgia. She served as a member of the advisory subcommittee of health disparities for the CDC director, and she was appointed by our late president, our president, Mr. Barack Obama. I am so happy that Dr. Jackson is the recipient of many, many awards. We are so happy to have her. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta. Her sorrow ain't here today to push
no,
her.
I'm not.
I was going to say, you should run that Delta Sigma Theta.
Well, did I mess that up, Doc? Oh, you received an award.
I'm not a member, but Delta has awarded me several times. They have.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let that go. We'll let that go. Dr. Jackson, it is so good to have you with us, especially during this time talking about mortality of our babies in a climate where they are looking and just had a law passed about abortions. Unfortunately, many times we don't need abortions because due to the stress of the world, we end up losing our babies, which is unfortunate. But your research has been profound in that area.
My God.
Say something to us about your latest research.
Well, hold on. Before we do that, Jackson, let me ask you this. One of the things that we always ask before we get started is, how you doing in these COVID streets? Because COVID is
I'm doing, I've had my milestones along the way. So last weekend was the first time I was able to travel by myself. I had hip replacement surgery last year. So that's a long process. So, but some young women, part of an organization, I'm one of the founders of Black Mamas Matter Alliance. They invited me to Washington because they were naming an award after me. And so I prayed on it. I said, okay. They kept saying to me, but you gotta come. And so I said, okay, now, I have to travel a certain way. I now need to have a wheelchair when I come through X, Y, and Z. And they treated me like royalty. So that's a milestone and a praise report for me. Amen. So I'm making it on. And the fact that I'm here with you guys nationally is letting me know I'm making it on too. It would, I mean, there are different ways to do things now. So I am grateful for that. So thank you for asking that, because we do need to ask that, because things change so for us. I mean, when you think about the last 2.5 years, who would imagine? But the impossible became possible, and we had to hold on to God's unchanging hand. So I thank you for this opportunity, and thank
Dr.
you for that
Jackson,
question.
they call that modern technology, but I'm gonna be real transparent. Every now and then, I need to call my 7-year-old grandson and have him work it out for me. Just being
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've had some face-to-face, hand-to-hand, heart-to-heart moments recently, which have just been very uplifting. But I want to say, Brenda, it is just an honor and pleasure to be with you. You know your heart. She knows me, but she knows my family. She knows the family struggles. She has been the counselor, the intermediary to say, now, will you talk to my daughter about X, Y, and Z? Because, they get off a little while. You need to have somebody else who can get in there and say a few things. Right. And she has been that person for us. So when she called me, I said, yes, absolutely. Yes, I can. Whatever you wish for me to do, I am available. I'm ready and able to do so.
Hey, but so, you're the scholar in the area, so who else would I call? I wouldn't call anybody else. Who knows about our mortality rate and our babies, and who's done all this research? We are just so glad to have you, Dr. Jackson, to be with us. And we know the struggles that sometimes we all go through. And Dr. Wright is going to, as I shared with you privately, I'm going to share on air. Dr. Wright is a praying almond. And we're going to have her lift you and your family up in prayer. I can get a prayer through, but hers sometimes go by light speed. Mine may take a little while, but hers are lightning speed. So we're going to have her make sure she lifts you and your family up in prayer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You want me to go, or you gonna go?
You can go ahead and start. You're doing
all right. You have been doing a lot of research around stressors for African Americans, especially African American mothers. Can you talk to us about what might be the major stressor for us?
Well, I will start this off to say, Black women have stress like everybody. All of us have stress. Right. But what we consider as stress is built around what our experiences are, what our history is, what the culture is, what are those things that have gone before. And so our stress is really embedded in the lived experiences of African American women. Sure, we have the day-to-day things. We're like anybody else in traffic or not in traffic, worried about what our jobs will do or won't do, how we're going to get paid, how we're going to manage the resources that we have to take care of whomever we have to take care of. And everybody has that. But if you're a Black woman in America, there are a couple of things that happen to you, and you're Black and you're a woman. And depending on what your socioeconomic status is, you have certain expectations or desires for how your life should go. And so my work has really looked at what Black women say are the stressors in their lives. I started this work, if I may just kind of give a little background. I started this work really in the 90s, but it was in the 1980s that I really was introduced to it without knowing it. I'm a graduate of Spelman College, and a survey was passed out to Spelman women and other women, and women from Clark, AU, and Morris Brown, with the goal of looking at why was it then that Black babies were at greater risk of being born premature, low birth weight, and dying before their first birthdays. Huh, most of us didn't know that. And so they compared us to the what was Agnes Scott at that time was predominantly a white school here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Spelman, predominantly black. Clark, Atlanta University, black. Morris Brown, black. So comparing these graduates, you say, well, okay, they're all college graduates. So therefore, they have equal knowledge about how important it is to take care of yourself during pregnancy. We assume that many of them are working and therefore have access to insurance. But hey, the white woman with a college degree, the black woman with a college degree, there's a difference in those birth outcomes.
Yes, right.
Now, interestingly enough, I didn't complete survey at the time because I was insulted and I was very much Pan-African. And I said, now you insult me to say that I can't have a baby now. And I didn't complete it. But I always say to people, I say, you never know what God has in store for you, because I would have never thought that later on I would really immerse myself in trying to uncover what this was. So in trying to uncover what this was, I asked Black women, why did they think we had high levels of hypertension, high levels of diabetes, high levels of heart disease, had a greater rate, a greater possibility of dying from cancer. And of course, people talked about health care, and they talked about exercise, they talked about diet, but to a one, they said stress. It's the stress of who we are. And so over the years, I've talked to thousands of Black women about what are the stressors in our lives. And so if you talk about the different categories in stress, like what we call chronic stress, what happens day after day after day, which could be going through traffic, could be going to the store to buy things. But it's always an overlay of race and gender for us. So you going through traffic, which means that you have to travel further or more congested, or the roads are not good, whatever that is, whatever your community is. And that's about inequity around access to things. It's interesting to me that the transportation department is talking about how our neighborhoods were destroyed because of the interstates that went through them. But that creates a whole thing. Or if it's going to the grocery store. So why is it in my grocery store in my predominantly Black neighborhood it's more likely to have empty shelves than the same store, the same kinds of other neighborhood? They never saw the empty shelves. So whether it's chronic stress or whether it's acute stress. So when you talk about acute stress, that means when you maybe lose your house, lose your job, lose a loved one. For each one of those, for Black women, it's more exacerbated. We go to a lot of funerals. Of course, we went to a lot during COVID, but honestly, compared to my white colleagues, I go to a lot of funerals. Well, that's the manifestation of the disparities in the health outcomes, okay? Housing. We know now that the housing issue is a grave one, and as our neighborhoods begin to change, that's a manifestation of race and gender, okay? Losing a job or inequities in the job. We already know that those things happen in terms of lack of promotion, lack of opportunity, differences in the pay. We already know that Black women make less money than others in the same workforce. So those are the things. So there are things that other people experience, but it's exacerbated by us being Black and female. And the things that we experience that others don't experience is the whole assault of racism. And of course, one of my latest papers looked at the effects of pregnant women anticipating that someday their children would have negative encounters with the police.
Wow.
So talking to babies who have children less than 5 years old, so they're not dealing with teenagers. These are young mothers. And for those who agreed to a question that said, my Black youth are more likely to have negative encounters with the police, they also are at greater risk of having depression. And other studies have looked at this, uh, neighborhoods where the higher the incidence of police shooting unarmed individuals, then you saw a relationship between that and premature births among Black women. So we know that those kinds of things that we have to be vigilant about, that we have to look over our shoulder, the kinds of protection, the kinds of things we have to tell our children and ourselves when we're out. I don't know if any of you saw a news story where a woman who was pregnant was driving through a neighborhood, and it looked like it was a dark area, and she was speeding. She admitted she was speeding, but she did what we've been taught to do. She went to a lit place,
lighted
and
area.
the police came, and that's right, in a lighted area, and the police got and grabbed her and handcuffed her. And she said, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. And he says, any old excuse will do. I mean, it was just horrendous. So this happens at all levels. So the stressors, just to reiterate what your question was, yes, we do have the stressors that everybody has, but they get exacerbated and unequal, inequitable, whatever you might want to say, beyond what others experience because of race and gender. And then we have this specific one that's around racial discrimination and anticipation of violence and harm because we're Black and female.
So, Dr. Jackson, my question, I guess I want to go into the next question, which, what interventions did you discover worked best with Black women and their health? Because we're known for using quote unquote holistic when it's basically ancestral beliefs we have been taught. And I'm just going to tell you the truth and shame the devil. My baby had, he's now 44, so he survived, okay? He had ringworms. And old school said, get the turpentine, get a little sugar, give him that, and it'll flush him on out. That's what my grandmother said, and sure enough, it flushed him right on out. Now, you say that today, you want to jail. But my grandmother had, they got some turpentine each week. They got on a turpentine each week. It didn't kill them. But anything that you say outside of basic medicines or the medicines that we're familiar with now, you go to jail. So what do you think worked best?
Well, I will say this. One of the things that has been amazing to me is to see the progression of medical practices. And this is really beyond my field, but I'm more and more looking at what the healthcare that we receive. And again, that's a stressor for us too, because there is some inequity in terms of healthcare, both having access to it in the first place, and then once you're in it, access to what are the latest developments that are in medical. So I will say that we are recognizing that alternative and complementary medicine is what we call it now. It's certainly getting more recognition because we see that there is a whole series of things that come into play for somebody to be healed. And healing is different from what the medical is to address sickness. Healing is a larger goal. It has a larger goal. And I think when we talk about natural practices that we've had, I mean, my great grandmother was a midwife, herb doctor. And at a time when they really didn't know quite what to do, for instance, with premature babies. And I would hear them talk about putting the baby in the oven, but not in the oven to cook them, but to keep them warm. You know, they know the heat, whatever they do. Now, don't know how to do this. you wouldn't know what to do. But I'm just saying, but knowing what herbs and what have you, and we are really having some regard for that now. Okay, let me just say that, some regard for that. So as we put food with natural foods and herbs and what have you into the formula. So that is something that I think we do, but we have to be educated about it and understand that there are good things about modern medicine. I mean, we've seen it. 2020, we were just sitting at home looking at the walls. We didn't know nothing to do. Okay, we didn't know. We just knew to stay away. And so now we're in 2022. That because of modern medicine, whatever your feelings are, for me, I trust what this is. This is all I have. And but in any case, I think I think we have to study that, study the herbal practices as we understand the medical practice. I really do. I really do.
Were you about to say something, Dr. Fleeta? One of the things that we've been looking at, and I know, I know your research has been as Are you okay, Dr. Jackson?
Well, I am. I can't. You're going in and out. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can hear you. What were some of the findings about stress and resilience that you were able to uncover?
So I'm going to talk about both findings and process. One of the things I'm very proud of with this work is the way it was conducted and what it demonstrated. So the work has produced a assessment tool around for Black women. But what's unique about it is that it actually comes from the lived experiences of African American women. And I'm not going to say that I was among the first to use it in that term, but early on in terms of in public health research. Because today I was listening to the radio and they were talking about the President Biden convening a conference on hunger. And the last time it was convened was under Richard Nixon, and out of that came WIC. It came some of the standards around caloric intake. It was the development of school lunch programs, which really are patterned after the Black Panther feeding program, if we want to tell the truth about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the truth. And so and I was listening to that today, and they said when they had the first conference, one person who came in the room, she said, well, all these people with PhDs, what about the people who really are experiencing hunger or who know what to do to intervene when people are hungry? And so today they said they're going to make sure that at this conference that I think takes place tomorrow, there'll be people with the lived experiences. So my work was based on the lived experiences of African Americans, what they said happened to them, what happened to their children, what they saw happen to their mothers, what they saw happen in relationships, what they saw in terms of being abused. But at the same hand, I also asked women, what do you do? What do you experience? What do you feel? And part of what you feel in the moment of stress is overwhelmed, afraid you're going to fail, get no time for yourself, nobody's listening to you, all of those things. And the things that are tried and true, which of course this audience knows, is there are kind of three things that we are doing the analysis, because we go through the scientific process. I tell the young women who I mentor around the country, make sure your work is rigorous. And so we do rigorous scientific work according to what those standards, and we stand up, can hold our own within that. And so what happened was we found that we asked women what did they do. They always talked about their spirituality and religiosity. We didn't ask what church you went to. We didn't ask how you prayed. We just asked that. And within that was a place of comfort, support, guidance, history, all of those things. That was one thing. The other thing was really girlfriending. I'll call it girlfriending. It's nothing like having that social support, people you can talk to. And those individuals who saw themselves as being isolates, they seem to be more at risk of the depression. That's not to say that people have girlfriends won't have depression, but they seem to be more at a higher level. And then the last thing was really knowing your culture and history. So those who recognized that they saw women from the past who had done things to be the inspiration and the aspiration for what they wanted to do. So those are the things that really come into play, in addition to other whatever kinds of practices individuals may be using. But those are the things on the psychological plane, because my work, remember, is on the psychological plane. I don't necessarily do work that's within the medical system. I'm now part of a group that's looking at some of these things that get ignored and therefore become real barriers for receiving the best that the medical practice can provide. But those are the things. It's around faith, it's around relationships, and it's around history and culture. Those things really seem to bolster us. They are the things that we have.
Dr. Jackson, you talk about lived experiences and how we have looked at, how you look at the lived experiences of Black women. From a theological perspective, that's where womanist theology comes from. It is the lived experiences of women and their God, looking at how God has been and intervened in their life. So if you know something about that, and you know that God has brought you through, that can help you with the next hurdle that you have to endure.
That's right. And womanist theory has been a framework guiding this work to understand that women are authorities on their lives. And because they're authorities on their lives, that authoritative knowledge can drive research, can drive interventions, can drive policy, can drive all of those things. And I'm just happy to say in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I have seen among young Black women scholars a infusion of that in their work. They're real clear about it in terms of what it means, and the understanding that they can create frameworks that are representative of who we are, and not try to do the round peg in the square hole for some things which fundamentally don't come from us to be us, rather than to understand that we can create these things from us. And so there's a movement afoot right now, and I'm glad to still be running with the young wolves who are doing what they need to do, and so that is a driver, as you said, with the womanist theology, womanist theory, to understand that it is within us that we find the solutions for us.
But Dr. Jackson, we talk about sickness, and many times when you talk about sickness, people think in terms of a physical type of sickness, but we're seeing more and more mental illness arising within our communities and within our children. And how, if you would please, you've done such a beautiful job of articulating for us. Share with us, how do you think inequality contributes to making us sick?
Well, we actually know scientifically that inequality does make us sick. If I will start out with the physiological, at the genetic level, there's something called telomere lengths. And so the longer those telomere lengths are, it is associated with how long your longevity. we have tested to see that those individuals who count high levels of exposure to racism, that there's a shortening of the telomere lengths. We actually have some science to show that. We know from numerous studies that exposure to racism, both that which is expected or anticipated, and in the case of raising our children, we have to be on guard for an incident happening. Okay, we have to be on guard for an incident. We can't put a Black child out here and they not have any thoughts that may one day happen to. Well, we know that for African Americans, that can be the pathway to depression, to anxiety, to anger, and anger inward is depression. And it also anger at a certain level affects our cardiovascular system. It affects our digestive system. And we also know that the research is very clear in the relationship between discrimination and preterm birth. We know that for some women that those babies that are smaller, that is one of the contributors. There are others that are contributing to it. One of the things that was really sad to me is the CDC has just released its findings around maternal deaths. And so I started mainly with infant mortality. Some years ago, I received a call from Amnesty International saying, well, Dr. Jackson, are you aware that there is a decline, there's a rise in the number of women who are dying as a consequence of childbirth? Well, that's something I think about in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and on up, but not in this century, not in the 21st century. But what we have discovered is that we are having a rise in maternal mortality, women who die in connection with pregnancy. Most of those happen postpartum after she has delivered. And one of the highest causes in postpartum now is suicide. Suicide and drugs. Okay, that's what we're seeing some things now, and we certainly have to be on the lookout for this case. And in the uncertainty, of what life will bring in these times, to bring a baby and then to be alone. When we look at social isolation, we certainly have equated social isolation to the ill effects of cigarettes. So we know cigarettes will give you cancer. So we are now looking at isolation and loneliness as equivalent to cigarette smoking in terms of damaging our health. That's scientific. So yes, we know that the stress of being Black and female is contributing to our mental health in terms of depression and anxiety and other kinds of mental illnesses that we might see. We also know the stress of racism, what I call the stress of gendered racism. Because there's racism and then there's overlay of gender. Gendered racism is also a contributor to physiological illnesses. The other thing that we know is if in fact it is so toxic that it is affecting the baby before that baby is born, and that their reactivity to stressors may be so high that it contributes to them later on having cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and other things. So it's a two-tier assault. It's the mother, it's the baby in utero, and going forward for both of their lives.
Wow. Dr. Jackson, you've done some work on resilience too, that ability to bounce back. What do you find is the
Yes, yes, and
what do you find as the main reason that Black women are resilient? I know you've talked about resilience in the form that some of the things that come out of your research is that spirituality and religiosity, relationships,
Mhm,
as well as
mhm,
the environment, the culture. So, but what other things come
mhm,
up when you talk about resilience? Because we are often knocked down,
My
we are
God.
often,
yes, yes, we are.
suffer from setbacks. So, what are the
Yes.
things that we as African American women, how do we come back from that? What are the things that you found that we come back, how we are able um, to be resilient?
I,
Mhm.
I think in those three things that I named, it is operating within community.
Mhm.
So if I look at this podcast, it is real clear to me that this is a community uh, that supports each other, that laughs together, that cries together, that strategizes together, that does all of those things together. And I think that is really at the core of what it is. It is the bonds that we have, and those bonds come in different places. So that is what I was, and I say that in a health context because there's been at least an effort to replicate this sense of community in terms of protecting or advancing healthy outcomes in what we call group care. So
Mm.
group care is, say, groups of women who are all pregnant at the same time. They have their delivery days are close to. So instead of coming to the doctor and seeing the doctor individually, they come together as a group with a nurse practitioner, someone else who will do the weighing in and those kind of standard things as long as you're not high risk. But what happens is they form a community,
Mhm.
and in that community share what's going on, what resources are available, and all of that, and so that they form a community then which takes them to birth and pregnancy. So I
Mm.
think that's really, and this adherence to who we are, whose we are, and to understand what are our assets.
Mm.
What are our assets? What are the things that we value and protect,
Mhm.
that we think are good? I know Skip Gates is going to have a documentary that's coming up in October, which is supposed to talk about why we still stand. And for what I
Mm.
can gather about it, it is really invested in are the things that we hold important.
Mhm.
What from dance to how we look, how we make each other laugh.
Mhm.
All of those things are, and they have a physiological effect. See, that's the other thing. It is really because there's a mind and a body thing that's always taking place. And so
Mhm.
I think that has caused us to be resilient. Now, there's a price for resilience.
Come
There's
Mhm.
going to
on.
be a price for
Mm.
resilience because you get worn out.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you get worn out. Our goal has to be to thrive so that we get better than we were before. But
Right.
we also have to understand that we have to have some self-care,
Mhm.
moments of silence, quiet. It's so
Yeah.
interesting to me the numbers of people who don't know how to get peace be still. It's not
Mm.
My
part of what they know to do.
God.
And
Mhm.
yet that is part of our cultural heritage too. And sometimes we miss that piece of that's part of our cultural heritage. You know, couldn't hear nobody pray way down yonder by myself.
Oh my. Come
Okay.
on now.
But
Mm.
but but we have to understand that inward journey. So I think it's the inward journey and outward connections that have given us this the tools we need for resilience and thriving.
Mhm.
Yes.
You know, there are a lot more African Americans who subscribe not only to being Christian and loving Jesus, but they are also
Mhm.
embracing Buddhism, where they are sitting
Yes,
in that silence and praying and
yes,
meditating
yes,
because they found that
yes.
people who meditate live longer. That's why the monks live so long,
That's
is
right.
because they are
That's,
constantly meditating. And some
that's,
of that comes not
that's right.
just from jumping up and down, but being quiet and being still and being
That's
grateful and thankful for everything. So I'm grateful that
That's
you
right.
have shared with us. I want the audience to ask some questions. I haven't seen one question. Do you guys out there in the audience have any questions for Dr. Jackson? We've had a great discussion around
Yes.
mortality, around
Yes.
stress, around
Absolutely.
oh, I love the findings of religiosity, spirituality, community. I'm just loving those things that are dear to us, near and dear to us, that we need to keep doing. But we also need to find
Yes.
ways for self care and self help. Yeah.
But I
Yes.
think
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it is so important because once upon a time, these weren't things that were presented to us. These were not things that were uh, talked about a lot. And as we are maturing spiritually and coming back into our ownness of spirituality, we're learning more about us
Yes.
and learning that it's okay to be
Yes.
quiet. Even one scripture in the Bible tells us to study to be quiet. This is the talkingest generation. It's as if, some folks, they just can't stop talking. Some folks talk so fast they talk to themselves. But it's a blessing to be able to encourage them to find a quiet place. Many times I'm driving in my car and if I'm by myself, I don't even have the radio on. I just ride
Right.
in silence and soak it in. And sometimes how can you hear God if you always talking?
That's right.
That's
He
right.
can't get a
That's right.
word in edgewise. And so then you wonder why I can't get the healing that I need or why I can't get the peace that I need. You always talking.
Oh,
You know what, Dr. Wright, I
it's
learned. Go ahead, Dr. Jackson.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say one of the things that is being promoted around stress, intervention for stress, is what they call mindfulness.
That's right.
And
Yes.
mindfulness is really to begin to think, stop, think, go inward. Now, it's secular in its nature. And but I am grateful that it is something that is being advanced.
And it's being
And from
taught in
that,
school.
yes, that's right, mindfulness. So that you stop, you think, you go inward. And so it is something that is a new kind, relatively new, in terms of a way to get still for a minute before you act,
Right.
or to think before you act, so that you can go mindful about anything, whether it's mindfulness to keep you from eating too much food, mindfulness for you to stop and think about it. So that is one of the things that has happened, and again, more relatively recently.
You know, the scriptures tell us to be still and know. And you can't know if you're busy all the time. I found several years ago that
Right.
silent retreats, and I never thought I would enjoy, as extroverted as I am, I found that silent retreats where I really sought the Lord was more beneficial to me sometimes than just sitting in church. So
Mhm.
there are ways in which we can connect to
Mhm.
God, and we do. as African Americans. We know how to connect with God without always being in church.
Right. Dr. Burns has asked this question. What are 3 things you would say to a mother, especially with sons, to minimize stress surrounding our day-to-day living?
Minimizing that stress for her day-to-day living is to have a plan in terms of what it is she's going to tell her children that's age appropriate, to be in community with other mothers and fathers, to have that village that protects you, to educate yourself on in the event that something were to happen, what you will do, and to be active and involved, engaged, and if you can, be an activist in this, because it's larger than you. It's not your individual concern. This is a concern for all of us. You know, when the brother in Minnesota cried out for his mother, you know, mothers everywhere understood what he was saying, you know. And I thought about his mother. If you know anything about their history, they had been sharecroppers in North Carolina, having lost the land illegally. She came to Texas. They came to the housing projects. Their home was a home that a lot of other children came to. The siblings talked about this mother who made sure they were clean, fed, and went to school. Okay. So she had done all of this. Her boy did go to school for a time. He got off the wagon. You know, different things happened. But I thought about how much she put in him. Michael Brown's mother, who cried out, she said, "You don't know how much I did to get him." So he was on his way to community college. And there he laid in the street. So I think it's more important than ever that mothers, even during pregnancy, have a support group and have all of these other things, because we still are raising our children in what can be very dangerous places.
Dr. Jackson, we are just so elated and thankful for your being with us today. We have been enlightened. We learned some things that we already knew, that is spirituality and having that relationship not only with God but with others that can keep us and lower our stress. I look forward every week to being with my sisters, because we laugh with each other and we tease each other, and it's a way of relieving some stress. It really is. So I thank you for bringing the science that goes with it.
And let me say one other thing, and a girlfriend is important, but those relationships with fathers are important too. Very
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. So Dr. Jackson, hang out with us backstage. Don't go anywhere, and we will be right back.
God bless you all. We love you. Who's our guest on next week, Dr. Wallace?
I don't know. I hate to say that, but I don't know. Let's see if I can find it really, really, really quick. Or if someone can put it in the chat that may know, but I really don't know.
I can take bets on whether or not she finds it really, really quick.
No, we're not taking no bets. Shut up.
Because as our viewers know, Dr. Wallace is our challenge host.
That's right. When it comes to technology, I will not. I own it. But guess what?
I love her. But
guess what? I got it. How about that? I got it. Our guest next week is Tawana Angela Davis. Tawana Angela Davis is our guest next week. So now I've proved you wrong. How about that?
That's because our viewers were praying.
There's always a first time for everything, right?
Listen, we have been blessed. We have been blessed to host you and for you to allow us to host you. We look forward to seeing you again on next week. Keep praying for us because we are praying for you. We love you. God bless you. And thank you from Timely Wisdom.
Amen.